The RG351P and the RG351M are two of the best retro emulation handhelds I have ever come across. And for the past 3 months I have been using these consoles completely stock without making any changes or updates to them. And the reason for that being is that because it is such a great pick up and play console, it is just so wonderful to start up and start playing games immediately. It's such a brilliant retro emulation handheld for novices and beginners. So I wanted to see how these consoles would fare without making any changes to them, to see just how good they are at being a pure pick up and play handheld. Kick off your shoes and relax your socks while we go over my experience over the past 3 months with these two amazing handhelds. Now, like I said, the RG351P and the RG351M are two of my favourite handhelds I have ever come across. These two handhelds feel much more like a premium handheld console from one of the big three companies than any other emulation handheld I've ever come across. And the reason for that being is their slick performance, easy to use pick up and play gaming experience. Now, before we get into today's episode, if you like retro games and you love retro emulation handhelds in particular, you might want to think about hitting the subscribe button and ringing the notification bell, because I am delving more and more deeper and deeper into the world of emulation handheld consoles. I'm quickly finding these are one of my favorite ways to enjoy retro video games. And if you want to join me as I explore what the best retro emulation handhelds are around, then you'll want to stick around for future episodes. Now, one of the first things I mentioned in my review of the RG351P a few months back, and you can check out that episode from a link up here if you'd like to, is just how good it was at emulating most of the games and consoles on this system. Now, I did mention that it struggles with Dreamcast games, and I'd also mentioned there were a couple of instances where N64 emulation wasn't 100%. But as for the rest of the consoles and games emulated on the system, I'd had a pretty damn good experience. However, over the past 3 months, I've been delving more and more into the libraries of all the consoles and the games that come on this system as standard. And the thing I have to add is that the PSP emulation is not 100% either. There are a few instances of games that I started up and started playing, for example Ridge Racer, that just had graphical and technical issues, especially during cutscenes that meant that I couldn't enjoy the game fully. And this experience extended as well to some of the other PSP titles available. Now, as I researched this more and more, this is a common issue that is known within the community. Now, this problem itself seems to have been solved, at least to some degree, or at least improved by future firmware updates. Now, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I have not made any changes to these two consoles purposely so then I could review them in their stock form. However, like with any other console or any other form of hardware like this, you should regularly keep the systems up to date with firmware. Normally, this is done more automatically, but with the RG351 consoles, it's not done automatically. It's a manual process that you have to follow yourself. Now, I am going to update these consoles, and I will do a future episode covering how you update the firmware on these consoles for anybody that's wondering how to do it. But like I said, it's not something that automatically happens, and therefore for novices and beginners, they might not be updating their systems, which is why it was important for me to not do it for this 3-month review. Hopefully, after I've updated the firmware to the latest version, we will start to see some improvements in the PSP emulation, and I'm hoping we'll start to see some of those glitches I saw in N64 games sorted as well. Now, the next thing I would like to mention, and I have to say I experienced this only with the RG351M. I didn't experience this with the RG351P, but that was at one point when I was playing the console, all of a sudden the controls stopped working. They weren't responsive. Now, the way the RG351s work is that when you power it up, the system behind recognizes the controller input, and you see the little notifications popping up on the bottom that it's just done that. And so I switched off the console and switched it back on, and I could see that it was not recognizing the inputs. It didn't recognize the controls built into the system as a controller. I tried restarting a few times and I had intermittent situations of it picking them up for the menu but not in the games, or maybe picking it up in the games and losing it later on. Now I reached out to Anbernic and they confirmed with me that this is an issue that can potentially happen sometimes when your battery is running low. So I put the RG351M into charge and the issue was gone straight away. I've also not had a repeat of this issue, so it doesn't seem to be something that is guaranteed to happen if your battery's running low. But it was definitely something worth mentioning and something that popped up after my initial review of the console. It would be ideal if this didn't happen, but once again the firmware update itself could sort out these issues. And I will be able to give you more information on that when I do upgrade these consoles in the next couple of weeks. And like I said, if you want to find out how to do that, then hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can find out when the episode drops about how to update your RG351M or RG351P. Now there is one final thing I need to mention, and it's not about the hardware itself, it's about the name. You might have noticed it, I call it the RG351M and the RG351P, and I've gotten a lot of stick in the comments for that. Now I'm putting it out here right now. I think we should call it the RG351M. Why? There's fewer syllables. It's easier to say. I'm starting a movement, guys. Who is with me? Are you part of the RG351 crew or are you part of the RG351 crew with me? Now, I don't know which one is technically correct. I guess I could reach out to the company and ask them what they expect it to be. But as it stands, I'm liking 351. And unless you can give me a damn good reason why we should call it the 351, other than the fact that a bunch of other YouTubers have called it the 351, I'm sticking with 351, and I hope you stick with me too. If you have enjoyed this episode, then you can stick around for future ones. And you can also check out some episodes from our huge backlog as well, which will pop up over here. Once again, thank you for watching and see you next time.